The fight for civil rights from the 1930s through the 60s was volatile, scarred by violence against peaceful protesters and activists fighting segregationist Jim Crow laws and other kinds of oppression. Jazz musicians responded with music that poured out the heartbreak and justified rage of the era. Strange Fruit was a song performed by Billie Holiday, who first sang and recorded it in 1939. Written by a white Jewish high school teacher from the Bronx, Abel Meeropol wrote it as a protest poem, exposing American racism, particularly the lynching of African Americans. Inspired by a photograph of the 1930 lynchings of Thomas Shipp and Abram Smith in Marion, Indiana, he wrote this scalding poem, eventually setting it to music. Shipp, 18, Smith, 19, and 16-year-old James Cameron were accused of robbery, murder, and rape. Cameron was able to escape the mob, but Shipp and Smith were dragged out of their jail cells and beaten to death. The photo shows the bodies of Shipp and Smith hanging from nooses as a crowd of white people stare at their bodies. One man looks back toward the camera as he points at the atrocity. "Black bodies swinging in the southern breeze," Billie Holiday sang in her powerful 1939 recording of the song, "Strange Fruit Hanging from the Poplar Trees." The haunting lyrics of Strange Fruit paint a picture of rural America where political and psychological terror reigned over African American communities, and Holiday dared to perform it in front of black and white audiences alike. After overcoming a reluctance to tackle it, Holiday made Strange Fruit her signature closing. As her set was coming to an end, waiters would stop serving. Then Holiday would sit by herself on a stool with only the mic and a spotlight on her face as she sang. After the last lines, "Here is a fruit for the crows to pluck, for the rain to gather, for the wind to suck, for the sun to rot, for the tree to drop, here is a strange and bitter crop." A chilled silence often followed, and Holiday would leave the stage. When the lights came back on, she'd be gone. She wanted to just let the song hang there, and that would be her final statement. They often talk about how the white audiences would be too uncomfortable to clap. Lynchings had reached a peak in the United States at the turn of the 20th century, and the great majority of victims were black. The song has been called a declaration and the beginning of the civil rights movement. The horrifying image of black bodies swinging in the southern breeze, strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees, galvanized singer Billie Holiday. It painfully took her back to the time her father was refused hospital treatment because he was black, which contributed to his death. Strange Fruit was an anthem for those striving for equality, but also a trigger for reactionaries. Holiday often encountered racist hecklers and walkouts when she performed the song. She said that singing it made her fearful of retaliation, but because its imagery reminded her of her father, she continued to sing the piece, making it a regular part of her live performances. Commissioner of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, Harry Anslinger ordered Holiday to stop singing Strange Fruit. She refused. She was later entrapped while buying heroin from one of Anslinger's operatives and spent a year and a half in prison. After her 1948 release, she was not allowed to renew her cabaret performer's license and could therefore not perform in nightclubs. Instead, she sang several sold-out concerts at Carnegie Hall, including one on March 27, 1948, when she riveted audiences with her performance of Strange Fruit. More than 4,000 black people were lynched in the United States between 1877 and 1950, according to the Equal Justice Initiative's 2015 report, Lynching in America. Strange Fruit was written during a decade when organizations such as the NAACP were pressing lawmakers to make lynching a federal crime. But the NAACP's efforts were continually knocked down by white supremacists in Congress who used filibusters to defeat any such bills. The Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act was passed by the U.S. Congress on March 7, 2022, and signed into law on March 29 by President Joe Biden. The law defines lynching as a federal hate crime. A federal anti-lynching bill had been in proposals to Congress for over 100 years. A quiet man, John Coltrane was reluctant to make political statements, choosing instead to speak through his music. His longtime pianist, McCoy Tyner, once said the rhythms of Alabama, which Coltrane wrote after the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing, were inspired by a speech given by Dr. King. Although Coltrane never confirmed that he was writing about recent events, what is indisputable is the work's gravity and its beautiful, haunting melody. The September 15, 1963, Sunday morning firebombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama, left 4 young African-American girls dead. Instead of rising to begin prayers, the congregation was knocked to the ground. As a bomb exploded under the steps of the church, they sought safety under the pews and shielded each other from falling debris. In the basement, 4 little girls were killed. 14-year-olds Addie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Carol Robertson, and 11-year-old Cynthia Wesley. Addie's sister Sarah survived but lost her right eye. Upon learning of the bombing at the church, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. sent a telegram to Alabama Governor George Wallace, a staunch and vocal segregationist, stating bluntly, "The blood of our little children is on your hands." Many whites were as outraged by the incident and offered services and condolences to the families. Over 8,000 people attended the girls' funeral service. The FBI office in Birmingham launched an immediate investigation. In a 1965 memo to J. Edgar Hoover, FBI agents named 4 men as primary suspects for the bombing. All 4 men were members of Birmingham's chapter of the Ku Klux Klan. Hoover chose not to approve arrests, stating, "The chance of prosecution in state or federal court is remote." According to the FBI, although they had identified the 4 suspects, witnesses were reluctant to talk and physical evidence was lacking. In 1971, Alabama Attorney General Bill Baxley reopened the case. Robert Chambliss was convicted of murder on November 14, 1977. However, it would be decades before the other suspects were tried for their crimes. In 2000, the FBI assisted Alabama state authorities in bringing charges against the remaining suspects, who were tried, convicted, and sentenced to life in prison. Alabama wasn't the only southern state convulsing in racial turmoil. In Jackson, Mississippi, on June 12, 1963, civil rights activist Medgar Evers was murdered in front of his home by a Ku Klux Klan member. The murder enraged and incited singer Nina Simone. Evers began his journey as a civil rights activist when he and 5 friends were turned away from a local election at gunpoint. He had just returned from the Battle of Normandy in World War II and realized fighting for his country did not spare him from racism or give him equal rights. After attending college at the historically black Alcorn State University, Evers mounted a boycott of gas stations that barred black people from using their restrooms, distributing bumper stickers with the slogan, "Don't buy gas where you can't use the restroom." Evers gained notoriety in the eyes of white supremacists after becoming involved in 2 high-profile Mississippi cases. His public investigations into the 1955 lynching of 14-year-old Emmett Till and the 1960 conviction of Clyde Kennard, a black civil rights activist framed for crimes he didn't commit. White supremacists made several attempts on Evers's life before succeeding on June 12, 1963. After pulling into his driveway and getting out of his car carrying NAACP t-shirts reading "Jim Crow Must Go," Evers was shot in the back and died at the local hospital less than an hour later. A member of the Ku Klux Klan, Byron de la Beckwith, was arrested for his murder but remained free after all white juries twice deadlocked on his guilt. 3 decades later, justice was finally served when de la Beckwith was found guilty of Medgar Evers' murder and sent to prison. Mississippi Goddam is a song that was written and performed by singer and pianist Nina Simone, who later announced the anthem to be her first civil rights song. The song captures Simone's response to the racially motivated murders of Emmett Till and Medgar Evers in Mississippi and the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing in Birmingham, Alabama, that killed 4 black children. On the recording, she sarcastically announces the song as a show tune, but the show hasn't been written for it yet. The song begins jauntily, with a show tune feel, but demonstrates its political focus early on with its refrain, "Alabama's got me so upset. Tennessee's made me lose my rest, and everybody knows about Mississippi, goddamn." Simone first performed the song at the Village Gate nightclub in Greenwich Village, and shortly thereafter in March 1964 at Carnegie Hall, in front of a mostly white audience. The Carnegie Hall recording was subsequently released as a single and became an anthem during the civil rights movement. Mississippi Goddam was banned in several southern states. Boxes of promotional singles sent to radio stations around the country were returned with each record broken in half. Simone performed the song in front of 10,000 people at the end of the Selma to Montgomery marches, when she and other black activists, including Sammy Davis Jr., James Baldwin, and Harry Belafonte, crossed police lines. This is James from One Track Jazz. Thanks for listening, and please check out the biography documentaries for Billie Holiday, John Coltrane, and Nina Simone. Their links are in the description.